Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on navigating back to work during this COVID 19 era. My name is Dr. Vineet Nair, and I'll be a moderator for today's event. We have three eminent panelists lined up today to provide insights in three critical segments, followed by a Q&A. These segments will address the role of COVID testing in going back to work, how leadership can show the way in helping businesses adapt to the new normal, and finally, on what are the actual guiding principles which will help you get your workplace back on track. I would like to remind everyone that our webinars are intended to be as interactive as possible, and we encourage you to actively participate by submitting as many questions as you like at any time you want during the presentation. To submit your question, simply type the question into the chat box on your right and click send. We will have a consolidated Q&A session with all the speakers towards the end of their presentations. Let me introduce our first speaker and panelist for today, Dr. Anupa Dikshit. Dr. Anupa is the Laboratory Director of Suburban Diagnostics and has held the post for over 16 years. A dynamic leader and smooth orator, she's been the driving force behind COVID 19 testing at Suburban Diagnostics since the early days of the pandemic. She will now expound a short presentation on how the COVID 19 testing methodologies can be used by your organization in going back to work. Without further ado, let me hand over the reins to Dr. Anupa. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vineet. And a very good evening to all of you. It's a pleasure talking to all of you. So, COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives, and it will continue to change the world, the way we have seen it, the way we have known it, the way we work, the way we rest, and definitely the way we work. We all know COVID is here to stay. Now, in the new normal, once we understand the mode of transmission, we know what needs to be done and what precaution needs to be taken going ahead. So, which is why it's important to understand the mode of transmission. Now, infection of SARS-CoV-2, or what we commonly call as COVID-19, can cause illness which can range from mild to severe, and also in some cases it can be fatal. We all know about it very well by now. Now, it is important to know that the virus is mainly transmitted through droplets. Now, how are these droplets generated? Now, these droplets are generated when an infectious person either coughs, sneezes, or exhales. These droplets, which are coming out of your mouth while sneezing or exhaling, are too heavy to hang in the air, and which is when subsequently it quickly falls on the floor of the surfaces. So people can become infected by touching these objects or surfaces and subsequently touching their either eyes, nose, or mouth. Now, symptoms may take around 2 to 14 days to appear after the exposure. So, any testing which we want to do for the COVID needs to be done once the symptoms have developed. Now, primarily, patient will have complaints of cough and shortness of breath. These are the two primary symptoms which are seen. But along with that, there are other symptoms like headache, loss of smell, of taste, then fever, joint pain, headache. There are some other myalgia, body ache. So these are other symptoms which are commonly seen in all virus conditions, which can actually alert anyone that he or she might have COVID-19 infection. So as far as COVID-19 testing is concerned, there are different tests which are available. Now, in this, some diagnostic tests are there to detect the infection, whereas the other detect the immune response. Now, immune response is the body response against the virus, where the body is trying to fight the infection. So, first test is RT-PCR, which we all know. Second is the antigen test, which has been recently approved by ICMR. And the third of all is the antibody test. So, these three tests put together compile the entire testing modality for COVID-19 currently. RT-PCR test is the gold standard currently. Why? Because this is done in the molecular setup, which is a very strict lab, following stringent conditions. It's a gold standard, and what does it do is, it picks up the genetic material of the virus. So if a person who turns positive in RT-PCR, we can actually confidently say that the person is infected with COVID virus. As it is, it's a very high highly sensitive and a high specific test. With sensitivity, I mean it is the ability to correctly identify those with disease, whereas specificity is the ability to correctly identify those who do not have the disease. So, if somebody is turning positive with the RT-PCR, we can confidently say yes, the person has COVID-19 infection. Well, how to do the collection? The sample to be collected are the swab samples. What are the swab samples? These are collected from two sites as advised by ICMR, which is collected from the nose, nasopharyngeal, and through mouth, which is oropharyngeal. When these two swabs are collected and tested for RT-PCR, we know that confidently your report is going to be correct. Now, the use is to diagnose the current infection. A similar test which is equivalent to RT-PCR but not as symptomatic, as sensitive as RT-PCR is the antigen test, where we detect the virus, we detect the virus antigen. The target is definitely going to be the protein of the virus. This is not the genetic material directly, but the protein which is covering the virus is what we are picking up in antigen testing. Sensitivity is moderately sensitive, which means it has a tendency to give false negative report as well. So that is a factor which we need to keep in mind. It is highly specific, which means you know if a person is negative, you will get negative. But again, the sample type is nasopharynx, which means the swab needs to go in the nares, collect the sample from the nasopharynx, and we do the testing. But again, it's a screening test for current infection. I'll elaborate it little more going ahead. Third, my favorite is antibody testing. Now, this is a very useful tool because it talks about the indirect detection of virus. And here we do not talk about the virus directly. We are talking about the humoral response or immune response of the body against the virus. So antibodies is what we are looking at when we talk about antibody testing. Sensitivity is moderate, specificity is high, but again, keep in mind, this is only for risk assessment and it doesn't talk about active infection. That's the way we have three tests with us. Although antibody testing is done through blood sample, so a combination of swab plus blood serum sample gives us a good algorithm for both symptomatic and asymptomatic patients, which I'm going to take ahead with all of you. Now, a little bit more about RT-PCR. As I said, RT-PCR is the current gold standard and is most effective when done immediately after the onset of symptom. Remember, the incubation period, which is the period between the exposure and the onset of symptom, is around 2 to 14 days in an average adult for COVID-19 virus, which means on an average, after 5 days of exposure to the viral condition, either by a primary contact, you need to wait for 5 days before you can get the RT-PCR test done also. But if you have symptom, day 0 is the right time to do the RT-PCR test. Now, the test will detect the virus 2 days before the onset of the symptom, and it can be detectable until 24 days. So a median of 14 days is advised, which means a person who has onset of symptom day 0 can be tested positive until 14 days of onset of symptom. This is how RT-PCR can become positive in a patient who is positive for COVID-19. The advantage is the report takes 24 hours. This is what we perform, and we've been doing RT-PCR tests since March end. And so far, we have done around more than 125,000 cases till date. And we have great experience when it comes to the testing protocols and how the ICMR protocols need to be followed. And it's a vast experience. It's a huge, enormous journey that we have continued until date. We are doing this. Well, coming back to the positive report, definitely we can say when RT-PCR is positive that the patient has COVID-19 virus infection. It gives a very, very confident report. Negative report, most likely the patient is not infected with the virus. This is a small summary of RT-PCR test, which is, keep in mind, is the gold standard test, and it can be done immediately after the onset of symptom. Second, the antibody test. Now, this antibody test is not to be used as a diagnosis. So keep that in mind. It is used only for serosurveillance only. And as I said earlier, this is the response. The antibodies are basically specific proteins which are produced by the body to fight off infection. So recovery of COVID-19 corroborates very well with the presence of antibody. This happens when a person who has come COVID-19 positive will not show antibody test positive at the same time. But after a period of 1 week to 21 days, on an average around 14 days of onset of symptom in a COVID positive patient, we can see antibody test coming positive. So this is a test which is actually to be done in the later half of the infection, and it will not tell you that the COVID infection is there or not, but it will tell you that there is the evidence that COVID infection was there in the past. This is the utility of doing an antibody test. So this test is done to prove that antibody is produced against COVID virus, which means that the patient had a past infection of COVID virus. So this is collected through blood sample and report is ready within 3 hours. Whereas if a report is negative, then we can say that the COVID infection has not been there in the patient anytime and the person is susceptible to getting future infection. This is the utility of doing a antibody test. Going with the third new test, which I mentioned as COVID antigen test. Now, COVID antigen test is again, it can be used for diagnosis, but it is not as superior to RT-PCR test because it will still miss out few cases of COVID positive reports and antigen tests will come negative in those cases. Now, the time period when we can do this test is during the early phase, which means from 0 days, which is the onset of infection or symptom, you can do it till 6 days. But the good side is the report is pretty fast. You can get the report within half an hour. So it is very fast and it can be done on site, which means the sample once collected. Remember, for antigen test, we need to use a nasal swab. Now, once you collect a nasal swab, we cannot transport the sample to the laboratory. We need to process the sample on site, which is where the antigen test, although being faster, the sample needs to be processed on site where the collection is done. A positive report, yes, we can definitely say that the patient is suffering with COVID viral infection, whereas a negative report of antigen, we cannot actually rule out viral infection. If the patient is symptomatic, there could be a possibility that the antigen test report has come negative. So it's highly advisable that the person gets tested with RT-PCR test as a reflex test to negative antigen test in a symptomatic patient. So these are the few pointers regarding the tests which are going on around. All these testing is very difficult to understand. How do you play around with the test? When to do what? Although it was very easy for me to tell you plus minus and the strength and the weaknesses of the test, it's extremely important to understand how to put this intelligence to practical use. So which is why we came up with an algorithm of testing. Now this starts when a patient or a person is asymptomatic. Asymptomatic person wants to know whether I ever got COVID infection or not, or whether I'm suffering from it or not. In that case, when an asymptomatic person wants to get tested, you start with the antibody test. Antibody test comes positive or it can come negative. Now, if the antibody test comes positive, remember antibody test is done collected through blood sample. It's a blood test. If it comes positive, there are 3 outcomes to it. One, the person is already seroconverted, which means the patient or the person had a past COVID viral infection. And now it's more than 14 days and the person has recovered, which is known as a condition seroconverted, which means now if he is seroconverted, it's most likely that the person will not get the infection back. That is option number 1. When you look at the positive, there is a second option. Remember, if there is a time when antibody is positive, which means the body has started fighting against the infection, there is a possibility that the virus is still there in the body. It's the transit phase. Just to pick up that phase, it is extremely important at times to do the RT-PCR test also for these patients. Which means if a patient has asymptomatic person has antibody positive, it could be a transition phase, which is quite possible that RT-PCR can come positive in those patients, which means that the virus is still there in the body and has completely not been eradicated. Which is why in cases which are clinically warranted, high risk, and there is the exposure to confirmed case, sometimes it's important to get the RT-PCR test done. If RT-PCR comes positive, then we isolate or quarantine the patient or treat the person the way it is required to be done. But if RT-PCR comes negative and your antibody is still positive, we talk about the patient has recovered from the infection and is carrying a low risk. This is second option. Third option is antibody positive, and there is a choice given to the person. Don't do any test. Just self quarantine yourself for 7 to 10 days, and that's it. Then you can go back to work and you still are at low risk because you have spent 7 to 10 days more in isolation. With these three outcomes, you can actually label the person as having a risk assessment which is low for no testing plus isolation. RT-PCR negative is a low risk, and also if somebody is seroconverted, which is antibody has come positive, means the person has totally recovered from the infection. So we label this risk assessment basis the further investigation which can be done. Now, in the second scenario, when asymptomatic person's antibody test comes negative, what do we do in that case? Which means definitely the person has not been infected to COVID ever, which means we don't know whether the person still has it or not. So, in this situation, there are two outcomes. When you feel the antibody test is negative and there is clinical warrantation, which means you need to get some tests done, there is a high risk contact, there is a recent exposure to a confirmed case, in that case, you can either do antigen test or you can also go ahead with the RT-PCR test to know the current status. Most likely, if antigen test or RT-PCR test comes positive, which definitely means that the person is currently going through the infection, which is why the antibody has not yet developed. So this means that the person is high risk. But if the antigen test or the RT-PCR test comes negative, which means antibody is not there, current infection is not there, the person is susceptible to infection but is not carrying any threat as of now to others. This is what we mean by doing an antibody test along with RT-PCR and antigen together to gauge the risk of a person who has come antibody negative. But if you don't want to do further tests and your antibody is negative, then you carry a moderate risk, which means you are susceptible to infection going ahead. So take extra precaution. So this is how we have created an algorithm to be easily understood and to carry it forward for a person who is asymptomatic and wants to understand what kind of risk he or she is carrying back to work or maybe at home or wherever he or she is. So that is as far as asymptomatic is concerned. Now the symptomatic one is loaded with information, and I will not spend too much time on this because you all would be interested more in asymptomatic rather than symptomatic. But I'll just brief in short. When a symptomatic person comes, which means the person who has either fever, cough, or shortness of breath, you start by doing a RT-PCR test. That's the gold standard. And please, this is the way, do it, because then you are very sure about the sensitivity, specificity, and you know the result is going to come correct. RT-PCR positive means high risk. Please treat, hospitalize the patient, and later, if you want to do the test, go ahead with antibody test. But if RT-PCR test is negative, which means patient doesn't have infection current, there are certain clinical guidelines which we need to follow by either repeating RT-PCR test or you can still go ahead with an antibody test. But keep in mind, antibody test needs to be done after 2 weeks, which means at least after 14 days of onset of period, you can get the antibody test. And the algorithm goes on and on. So this is how I would summarize the intelligence that we can use of all the testing that we have known so far about COVID, which includes RT-PCR, the most sensitive gold standard test, collected through swab, which is collected through nasopharynx and oropharynx, which is nose and mouth respectively. Second is the antigen test, which is not as sensitive as RT-PCR, but is sensitive enough to tell you if the person is antigen positive. Yes, you can label the person as having COVID-19 virus infection, but antibody is a different tool which can tell you not about the current infection, but it will tell you that the patient had it in the recent past or long back, which is why your antibody is coming positive now, and probably the patient has recovered by now. So this is the summary, and there is lots we can talk about it. Probably we can take it up during our Q&A session. So thank you so much, Dr. Vineet. I'll pass it on to you back.
Thank you, Dr. Anupa, for that illuminating presentation. We will now be addressing the audience to say that we will have all your questions together after all the three presentations. Let me now introduce our second speaker and panelist, Mr. Sushant Kindra. The ever-smiling and good-humored Mr. Kindra has over 28 years of experience in the global diagnostic and healthcare industry, having previously worked in firms like Ranbaxy Labs, Siemens Healthcare, and Carestream. Currently the Chief Operating Officer, he has been one of the anchors of Suburban Diagnostics in this raging COVID storm. His personal experience with COVID-19 and his professional leadership of the organization during this crisis make him the best person to expound upon the role of leadership in navigating back to work. Over to you, Mr. Kindra.
Thank you, Vineet. I hope you can hear me. But before you introduce me, I also need to introduce you. So for those of you who don't know him, Vineet is a doctor. He's a pathologist. He is a marketing person. He's also a swab collector for RT-PCR test in Goa. And he's also a phenomenal moderator. So, thank you very much for the introduction for me, but I think it's very important we introduce you. Number one. Number two, I don't know what else you do. So maybe next time you tell me so that we can introduce you like that. So,
yes,
good evening, everyone. I think we had discussed and seen a lot of information around what has to be done, what is the technology currently, and how do we do it. And I think the back to work is very important that we actually make sure that people are safe when they come back. But I think it's also very important that what is the role of a leader or a manager, and most of you probably are either CXOs or CEOs or manager in your own capacity. I think it's very important to really understand the whole philosophy behind psychological problems of management. And we all know that this is a complex problem from an administrative perspective rather than from a technical perspective. So I think not much is spoken about a role of a leader or a manager in terms of how do we manage it. I thought it's very important that we also discuss it and take a few minutes to really understand what kind of challenges we are going to face when we start opening up Unlock 3.0 at this point in time. So as we all know, and I think we all know that there are always stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 of any virus, of any pandemic, and also when it unfolds, the opening up also happens when the stages. And I think it's very important to really understand that the whole economical level also will work in stages. We have seen Unlock 1.0, Unlock 2.0, Mission Begin, a lot of terms around it, but I think it's very important to really understand that the way economic conditions are opening up, the way the management of the entire economy is being opened up by the state, I think it's also very important for us to understand that similar stages is also we have to look at our organization at this point in time. So, needless to say, we have to understand that there is a new normal, and for any organization as a collective, will have to understand and also embrace this new normal, which is going to be completely different than what we have ever even imagined. Once we do that, that's the only way we can actually understand how an organization will thrive, sustain in this environment. So I think it's very important for really us to understand and to embrace the new normal from a perspective of sustenance of any organization. So how do we do that? So, we created this a framework of recovery model, which is probably easier to remember, is 3 Rs. And the idea is that how do we respond to this crisis? How do we return to work, which is the key topic in terms of today? And how do we reinvent ourselves to manage the whole thing? I think we want to discuss, and I want to discuss a few minutes on these 3 Rs, a complete framework which we've been designing. Now, obviously, how do we respond to this crisis? First of all, we have to really understand that there are various orders, compliances being issued by the local authorities. And to tell you very frankly, no government in the world is able to really understand what's going on. And to also be very clear that this is a massive administrative problem. And once we start on a policy, it is very difficult to really understand the whole behavior. So what happens is every state is issuing almost every day a new circular, a new order, a new compliance environments for any offices or the corporates or any economic activities. So it's very important for us to be always on top of what's the latest circular and how do we understand. Just give you a perspective, I think when we started with the BMC, something on the testing, I think there are more than 15 or 20 times the rules have changed, whether to do test, what to do test, how to do test, whom to test, and things like that. So it's very important for all of us to really understand the latest guidelines so that we are basically within the framework of the entire philosophy of management by the governments. Very critical. It's such a complex problem that it's very difficult for any leader to really decide or take any decisions without a collective and collaborative thinking. And I think it's very important, though, our suggestion, or my suggestion particular, would be to create a back-to-work planning team. So we all have these war rooms where we're trying to manage business, but I think we need to really very carefully think about also creating a team or similar war kind of a team for this project also, because it also has a complexity, equal complexity as we manage the business. Then, obviously, the role of the team, looking at the compliance and the orders of the government, one, we have to really understand who will be returning to work, when, and how. And I think these are the three key questions one needs to understand. And my opinion is that if you can work from home, you should. That's the broad understanding. However, there is always various functions which is almost impossible to work from home, and that's how we need to really create an environment, a corporate environment, a back-to-work environment for everybody. So we really need to understand that when the teams are working, maybe in stages and things like that. So that's very important. Now we have large teams, we have small teams, we have MSMEs, and we have large corporates. Everybody has a different challenge. And it's very important to really understand that the back-to-work plan should look at each individual, because each individual is behaving differently for this crisis. Everyone has a different perception of managing this crisis, and we need to respect that. To be able to respect that, one has to keep everyone in mind in terms of how we are designing a back to or return to work plan. And obviously, it's almost impossible for a large organization to look at it, but you can always divide into clusters, and these clusters, grading or whatever hierarchy you have in the organization, one has to really look at that so that we are able to cater to everybody's need as far as the back to work is concerned. Then, obviously, Minoti will talk about it after me, about how do we prepare a workplace? What is the right way of making sure that we do this social distancing and able to create a very healthy and a safe environment for the corporates. And I think every employee today, when he or she wants to come back to office, wants to really think about how safe it is for him or her to come back to work. So it's very critical for really prepare when we want to respond to a crisis. How do we prepare and spend some enough time in terms of designing a whole workplace? And there are many innovative ways to design your workplace to be able to maximize your efficiency and your work, and also create an extremely safe environment for all of us put together. I think that's what the overall responding of framework for recovery would be. And obviously, as we discussed early, that since the unlock is happening, unlock of the back to work is also happening in stages. It's always important to really understand phase ones, phase twos, and phase three of opening up or a back to work. So you can always start with a phase one, which is extremely small in nature, but slowly you build on it as the phases progress. So I think these are the this is the one framework of responding it to this massive crisis. Now, how do we return to work? Obviously, first thing is that we have to really ensure that our employees are productive, physically healthy, and mentally strong. I know physically healthy, we talked about immunity, we talked about antibody testing, as we just saw from Dr. Anupa. But there are also very important to see that how these employees will be productive. Remember, there is a kind of a psychological damage to all of us when we see this crisis at this level. We've never seen it. We've never even imagined it. And in fact, Hollywood or Bollywood movies, very few of them have even imagined it, that this is the kind of a management problem it can create. So obviously, we are basically going through a very complex psychological cycle when we are coming back. So it's very important to really, as a corporate, to really understand how my employees, when they're coming to return, and what kind of mental stage they are in. It's very easy to probably find a physically, we can look at the symptoms and discuss with them about their overall well-being, but it's very, very difficult to really understand their mentality or mental conditions in terms of how they feel. So it's very important for us to really keep that in mind while we're designing a strategy of returning to work. It's not an easy statement. It's not a very easy solution. It's a problem which we need to really understand, and we'll try to address it as we move along. As I said, that this is a very dynamic environment earlier. The rules are changing. Every day, the statistics are changing. Every day, probably virus is also behaving in a different way. So needless to say, we know that it is going to stay. We know the vaccinations or the medications are far away. We also know that the physical distancing rules are also changing, because we are, as we're discovering the virus, we are able to really understand how it behaves and how the overall scenarios of safety might change. So I think one really have to understand that if there are some scenarios, and if you can plot certain scenarios about the physical distancing, at least for next 6 months, it will be always great. I know that nobody has a crystal ball around it, but I think since we all are reading too much about this virus in TV or in WhatsApp, I think there's a lot of information which is available, can give us a little bit better perspective in terms of where the future is going. Obviously, I mean, we all know the business scenarios are different for different economic activities. We have to evaluate each business impact, what kind of business impact it has, what it can have based on the scenarios we've plotted, and preserve the cash. And I think a few discussions we've had so far, where we also talked about postponing certain investments in order to not only conserve cash, but also to be able to really understand in which direction this environment is going. So overall, ultimately, the plan is to conserve cash, managing your cost, reducing your cost if possible, postponing all the non-critical projects, and also looking at the business impact in terms of how we're going to work. Uh, I think Minoti probably will talk about it a little bit more in details, but what kind of protocols? There are many protocols which has been issued by either by the state or the governments, and also the HR functions also can create a little of SOPs around how do we ensure a workplace safety. For example, if you have a biometric mechanism, can we make it to a remote? Do we have enough signage around workplace safety? So those kind of things. Do we have supervisors? Do we have EHS officers? Do we have enough checklist around it? I think these are the SOPs and protocols has to be incorporated slightly differently, maybe even more so in the perspective of social distancing, masking, and other safety compliance issues. Um, Obviously, the controls, the overall, I would say, what I want to say is here is the re-engineering of the administrative control. The way we were managing earlier may not be in the new normal. So those kind of controls, either you have to relax them, or you have to, change them to really understand the whole psychological behavior of your employees. I think that's what every corporate will have have to think about it and also plan their activities around it. The third R, which is the most critical ones, is how do you reinvent your culture, reinvent your organization, reinvent your probably business models. Uh, the only way return to work process will work if you are able to monitor and intervene with a lot of agility. And I think that's the most critical part, is that because of such dynamic and a complex changing environment, it's very important for us to be agile. And sometimes I say here is that perfection is the enemy of good. So in order to be agile, you don't need to look for perfection. A greater good will do. Good will do for greater good. So I think that's what. So always remain in touch with yourself, remain in touch with your agility, and to be able to act very quickly. Uh, Always keep an eye on your current workflow, your employer productivity. You have so much of data, you have so much of KPIs, and I think discuss it. Ensure that you collect feedback from your employees as we go along. And I think that's because your employees will be able to tell you in aggregate much more than you probably can read it from your own way. Looking at the workflow, keep changing that workflow, and also the productivity. I think these are the key issues in terms of while we are inventing to the normal. And we all probably have seen, and as a manager, I can tell you, is that work from home works well. We have seen, I think most of us have been working from home. At least 90% of our employees, whosoever can work from home, is working from home. The way we have used the technology to be able to discuss, collaborate, and solve very complex problems has happened. Whether it's a Zoom meeting or a WebEx or a various webinar like this, we are able to really work better, in fact, efficient. And I think what COVID positive point probably at this point of time is the only positive I can take is that it has accelerated the more efficient use of technology and a better change management. The only positive. There are few more, but I think mostly negative. But this is one of the key positives. And I think one has to really look at how do I accelerate it even further? What kind of various tools I can use or invest in those tools, which basically helps me to be more productive, keeping the social distancing in place. So I think technology will play a big role and has already played an extremely important role. And last but not least one is that all employees who are coming back to work have a completely different frame of mind in terms of how they want the organizations to take care of them. Whether it is the healthcare insurance, whether it is the way the safe environment has been created, or the way the offices looks and feels, I think they are definitely willing to embrace various modality of connect and culture and carefulness. And I think we all need to really understand, and we must explore the various ways to be able to serve them, to be able to tell them that this is what the new normal will look like. I think with this, I would like to give it back to moderator Dr. Vineet to really take it forward. And if there are any Q&As or there are any further questions, I think we will have a Q&A planned after Vinod's presentation. So over to you, Dr. Vineet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kendra, for that enlightening presentation. I think a lot of the leadership men attending this particular webinar have learned a lot of new things. Moving on to the third presentation for today, our third and final panelist rounding up our triumvirate for today is Ms. Minoti Kothari. She holds an exceptional experience in audit, training, and process flow with a massive 24 years of experience in the field. She is part of Suburban Diagnostics core leadership team and an indispensable presence behind our day-to-day workings. Also known for her informative sessions on precautionary measures to be taken during COVID-19, she is considered as somewhat of a guru in this particular topic. As it is not possible for her to mention all the measures that a corporation or a company will have to take, she'll be presenting the basic principles. For the edification of all the attendees, we have prepared a very detailed document going into very much of a granular detail to help you devise a successful strategy for your workplace. This will be shared for you with you on an email after the webinar for today. As for now, the basic principles will be taken by Ms. Minoti Kothari. We'll move on to her presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Vineet. I think some of us are already back to our workplace, and the rest of us are looking forward to doing so soon. So I'll quickly touch upon three key areas, one being how to prepare a safe workplace, the second being how to manage employee safety, and certain administrative controls that will help us achieve that. So the first most important aspect would be to understand the various job tasks and categories that an employee performs at a workplace and determine certain risk and occupational exposure at workplace. Having known that, it makes it easier to control and to bring in safety precautions in these areas. The second one being maintaining hygiene and adequate use of PPE. There are certain policies and safety procedures to be set by the organization, and most importantly, being circulated to every employee time and again in the correct manner that it's understood well. Social distancing, I think it's never enough as much we speak on social distancing. So there are certain adjustments definitely that a workplace has to make with regards to space, rotations of shifts of employees, certain work patterns, and procedures that will help achieve social distancing at work. To achieve that, I think the key and the most important aspect would be to plan minimum number of people that are required to be at work safely and effectively. The key would also be to limit our business occupancy to a number of customers that can be safely accommodated without compromising social distancing. The next one would be how to manage certain common areas at workplace that are frequently visited by our employees, such as canteens, there are corridors, there are elevators. How do we keep a control and maintain hygiene at these locations? So implementation of staggered lunch and rest breaks will avoid congestion, and that will help us manage these areas better. If on-site canteens cannot be adhered to, as per the safety norms, it is important that we create an open canteen space just so that we don't have our employees walking in and out of the office for the breaks. The rest areas should also be very well ventilated, just as your open air canteen space. Commute at this time becomes a bit of a challenge as to, for those who do not have a private or a company transport available, is public transport safe? Yes, public transport can be safe, provided we manage the way the safety has to be adhered to. So we have to wear a mask before, during, and after work at all times. Certain short distances to workplace can be easily covered by foot and also by bicycle, which is also very healthy. Entry and exit to the office building. It is essential that we have minimum entry and exit points to a premise so that we avoid congestion of employees walking in and out during the peak hours. They will also be frequented by visitors, vendors, suppliers. So it is very important that we identify who are actually required to use the entry and exit points. Dissemination of accurate information. What do we mean by infodemic? I think infodemic is an excellent word in today's COVID situation. It is an epidemic of information, and that can spread misinformation, rumor, fake news, and also myth. And this can create a lot of confusion with regards to certain safety precautions that one needs to adhere to. So always ensure that we give very precise and correct and simple information to our team members so that there's no confusion around what is expected and what is delivered. Protect mental well-being of employees. As Sushant mentioned earlier, it is not just the physical well-being, but also the mental well-being of our employees, which is a key in today's time. So reassure your workers of what the company is doing at all times. Make sure that the employees know whom to contact. And this can be done very conveniently, very easily by creating a task force, which I'm sure most of the organizations would have by now, and display contact details so that every employee, whoever wants to reach out in need of support, can always easily reach out. Workplace flexibilities. Sometimes the HR feels that certain flexibilities may not be in support of the organization. So while we do create policies around flexibilities and work from home, it is also very important to ensure that employees understand how to make use of the available options to the benefit of the organization and their safety. Care of vulnerable staff. Now, under vulnerable, there will be two categories, one that are at moderate risk and the other category where they are extremely vulnerable and at high risk. Now, what do we mean by moderate risk? Moderate risk are those who are asymptomatic COVID positive, or they are asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, or those, the crowd of people or the employees that are suffering from some underlying conditions which make them more vulnerable to the disease, or they are above 60 years of age that makes them more vulnerable to the disease. So it is important that extremely vulnerable group is always work from home, and for the moderate risk, a case-to-case decision can be taken. Identification and isolation of sick employees. It is important that we ourselves identify, if we have any symptoms and stay home and do not report to work. And the organization needs to have a protocol around managing the staff who are sick and home and how to take it up, getting their test done, as Dr. Anupa mentioned, what test is relevant at what time, and accordingly do the needful. Return to work after illness or exposure. There are certain state guidelines that we need to keep following. The current guideline states that 10 days post your symptoms, you do not need isolation. And even a retesting is not recommended. It is not required to retest to ensure that you are COVID negative if you are COVID positive prior to that. You can get back to work after 10 days of quarantine or isolation. So having said that, I think I will await certain Q&As if there are more. And I think we need to stop being afraid of what can go wrong and be more positive to make it right. So thank you, Dr. Vineet.
Thank you, Minati, for that wonderful presentation. So now we'll be moving on to the Q&A. We, as most of you know, we already had the questionnaire link to submit questions that went out with the registration link. So we've had a lot of questions come in. Along with that, people have been asking questions on the chat box. So I will be addressing the questions to the speakers based on their area of expertise. The first question I think I should be asking is the question that has been asked the most, and this will go to Dr. Anupa. The question by far that has been asked most during the pre-webinar session and also during the chat is, how long do antibodies last? Do they give us any immunity? Do we as scientists, or does the government, anybody know exactly how they last? Dr. Anupa, I think you're muted.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
So, Dr. Vineet, that's a very interesting question regarding the antibody as to how long it lasts and whether it provides us immunity or not. So, the answer to the first question is that how long it lasts. So, there are a lot of publications. Before I speak about that, we should know that we are just 6 months in this infection. We barely know anything about the antibodies. We barely know anything about the human response also. So we are still evaluating. Every day there is a new release and we are understanding it much better. But as far as my knowledge concerns, over the research which I have done, what I understood is that IgM and IgG more or less starts rising together, because there was a guideline published by CDC sometime back talking about there is no identified advantage of assays, whether you are testing IgG, IgM, or total. It doesn't matter much as long as you are talking about the high affinity antibodies or those which are neutralizing in their capacity, which means the ability to fight the virus infection. So you need to choose the right antibody. That's point number one. Second is IgM is known to last as a normal routine. They start in the later half of the first week, peaks around 21 days, and it tapers down by around 35 days or so. That's what we are aware of currently. But when we look at IgG, it more or less starts rising almost at the same time. It peaks around 30 days, but it lasts much longer. Just to corroborate this, we are doing an in-house study in Suburban where we have few follow-up patients whom we have given positive and RT-PCR positive definitely. So we are periodically taking the samples and we are assessing how the behavior of antibody is. Although it's quite premature for me to share that data, but it's quite good actually. The antibodies are lasting pretty long. So a provisional number which I can say is around 3 months. They're already there until 3 months. There are very few which showed a dip in antibody, but a defined publication is yet to be awaited about a confirmed study on this regarding the life of an antibody. Anyways, that's question number one. Question number two is about the study. What was it, Dr. Vineet?
So the question that everybody was asking is, first, as I mentioned, how long do antibodies last, and second, is a person immune?
So immunity is a very research-oriented word right now. So for immunity, we definitely need to have two things. One is the right quantity of antibodies and the right quality of antibodies. We somehow know a little bit about the right quality, which means we need to have neutralizing antibodies, but what quantity will suffice a reinfection, we are yet not aware of it. So it's little premature to talk about it, but we'll have to wait for studies to get concluded probably at global level, and that should be clear in coming days, not as of now.
So it's still early days. So these kind of things take
early.
years of research to finally say. But as we know that there is an immune response to the COVID infection, which we can detect as antibodies. IgG stays for longer, but we don't know how long and we don't know how protective it will be unless further research is conducted. Yes. So another question, this was sent to us in advance. This is to Mr. Kindra. A question that has been asked is, do you have any insights for establishments where work from home is not possible at all?
Oh, the technically it's possible everywhere. I mean, as long as you're connected to the work. But I think there are factory workers. Obviously, when you the way I understand is that if you have to manufacture something, even though there are robotics nowadays which manages everything, but I think there are still a lot of work a lot of places where you may not be able to work from home. I think that was the question, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yes. No, they're asking if you have any tips or insights for for any organization where they cannot work from home.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think there are physical works and the factory workers and the blue collar workers. I think there are many. We just can't say that everybody works from home, and that's for sure. It'll not happen also for a very long time. If it happened, I think then it's a different problem altogether to manage. But I think most of us, most of the economical useful people can work from home. Let me put it this way: efficient and useful people.
Fair enough. This question that ties into actually the question asked to Mr. Kindra is for Minoti. What kind of social distancing measures should we be implementing inside an office?
So I think there are a lot of ways in which we can achieve that. But prior to that, as I mentioned, it is important to identify the teams that are only essential to come to work, should actually come to work. Very important to plan their timings as to what time which team comes to work. Also curtail on the visitors or vendors, suppliers coming to workplace. That will allow you to not have overcrowding at any given point. Besides that, flow markings for social distancing, placing posters that talk about it so that the employees do not forget. We are still getting used to the new normal. So it's important that it's at a display at all times. Also avoiding non-essential meetings if they are not required, and if required, should be in a well-ventilated room with minimum people that are required. And things like bringing in online training programs, not having classroom trainings, all these help social distancing.
Thank you, Minoti. Back to Dr. Anupa. There are a couple of questions. I'm clubbing these together because all of them come roughly together. First part of it is it's all regarding the antigen test. So one query is, can true positives be missed by this antigen test? Second is it as good as RT-PCR? And the question that people are asking is it reliable in detecting a positive patient's infection? Can we use that as a first line investigation?
Okay. So, Dr. Vinay, that's a very relevant question with the antigen test now available to all. The first question talks about whether it's as sensitive as RT-PCR when it comes to picking up true positivity. I would say no. As ICMR study also talks about, the sensitivity, which is the ability to pick up true positive, is only between 50 to 84%, which means it has a tendency to give you false negative even if the person is suffering from COVID-19 infection. So that's the major problem with this test, is the limited sensitivity, and we might end up giving a person as false negative report. Now, this can happen both with asymptomatic patients and with a set of symptomatic patients, which is why ICMR talks about doing a repeat reflex RT-PCR for those patients who are symptomatic and have been given a rapid antigen test report as negative, because you don't want to miss out COVID in a symptomatic patient. So it's not as good as RT-PCR when it comes to sensitivity. Second question is already answered. It's not as good as compared to RT-PCR. It's little lower. Yes, it has its own advantage, which means the rapid antigen test is rapid, as the name says, because you can get the report within 30 minutes. Yes, you need to go to the collection site where the swab is collected and the testing is done then and there. Rest, all the protocols is almost like RT-PCR when it comes to the intimation to the ICMR portal and all, that remains the same. So test per se, it has its own limit of giving a false negative report. And yes, first line antigen test, if you ask me, for a symptomatic patient, it's always RT-PCR. Always go with RT-PCR. That's the standard, gold standard. It is highly sensitive, highly specific. Once you know RT-PCR is negative, you can clear COVID infection. Positive, you can label the person as having COVID infection. It's very clean and clear RT-PCR test. So, given me a choice, it's always RT-PCR over antigen test.
Thank you, Dr. Anupa. Mr. Kindra, there's a question that's been put up in the chat box also, that one of the major challenges that leaders are facing is the fear among the employees. The employees not turning up because of their fear of infection during travel or at the workplace. So, how do you suggest that a leader or somebody in a leadership position manage their team members and help them overcome this?
I think a very, very interesting and a complex question. So let me put it this way. I think it's always lead from the front. It's always been able to. So what we did in our organization, probably I'll take that example, is that we opened up all the infection and the people who were infected openly to everyone. So these are infected. So that's the social stigma is out. And I think you have also seen the tweeting from Amitabh and Abhishek and about the entire family about being infected. So the idea behind it is that the recovery is not a big problem, right? It's just a 14 days of quarantine, a little bit of trouble, kind of symptomatic. For example, I, in my organization, was infected. One of the first ones to get infected. And I think the idea was that, how we can get that for a leader to be able to accept it and to be able to, explain what you go through. And I think that's why it's extremely important for us, for as a leader, to be open about people getting tested or yourself getting tested or yourself getting infected. Sorry. So I think that's one part of looking at it. Second thing is obviously needless to say we all know that the mortality rate is so low, especially in the economically useful people, that technically speaking, it's just all about explaining to people that nothing to worry about it. It's all the question of how you can prevent yourself. If you get it, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. It's just a 14 days of holiday. That's the only thing you can actually think about. The second thing, of course, is the idea is that as long as you are able to safeguard yourself and you create a working environment which is visible, which everybody can see. For example, in your office, if everything is marked very carefully and also communicated well in advance, that these are the safety precautions we are taking. I think there are few ways you can really manage those fear psychosis amongst your employees. I mean, needless to say, these are very high level inputs, but you can always, once you understand the whole concept, once you understand the employees, what they're going through, there are many ways of looking at it. I think making it open about your safety protocols, making it open about the entire problem will help the employees to get comfortable.
Yeah. Another question for Mr. Kendra itself is how should employees conduct interviews nowadays when hiring? Is it viable to do it only through technology? There are many people who have asked us that they don't feel comfortable doing it that way. So, what is your take on hiring during this this particular situation, during the new paradigm?
First of all, the good part is that you're hiring. Because that itself in this environment is a great thing. And I think what the interviews and everything is taken on Zoom and WebEx and things like that. No question about it. By the way, we are hiring, right? Suburban Diagnostics we hire. So all hiring, according to me, are done through Zoom. I don't see any problem from my team members in sort of that, the kind of chemistry, what kind of knowledge you want to have about the person whom you're speaking to. It's very easy to really understand this kind of technology we have. Video conference. That's it.
The new normal, yes, true. This is a question to Minoti. This is are there any particular protocols that you suggest that an office or a office building should have for visitors or customers? Anything in particular that you would mention?
Yes. So screening of the visitors or customers or whoever is getting into the premise is very essential. So one way of doing that is checking their temperature, checking the Arogya Setu app, limiting the number of people who need to enter the premise, as I spoke earlier, and maintaining common single entry and exit points. So there are various ways in which you can first control the crowd coming in and monitor the ones who are coming in are safe to be at the place. So.
Thank you, Ms. Minoti. Final question to Dr. Anupa. This question again has been asked. It's about the antibody tests. I think the question that has been asked is, does the antibody test need to be repeated? I think the questioner means that if it is negative, does it need to be repeated? So are there any scenarios under which you think an antibody test should be repeated, and if so, after how much time?
So basically, I'll go and quote ICMR in this case. So they have released the interim guideline in between talking about the antibody. Once it comes negative, you can go back and repeat after 10 days. So I'm going with that. I would advise the same. Go and get it repeated after 10 days minimal. And then probably we can follow up if the antibody titer is rising or not. So, and definitely it has to be in sync with the clinical condition and other symptoms which are present with the patient.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for now. I'd like to thank all the speakers for their phenomenal sessions, all the attendees for joining us today, and for their questions. If you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. Follow-up email will have all the details of how to get in touch with us in this case. We will also be emailing you a recording of this webinar within 24 to 48 hours. You'll be able to watch the webinar at your convenience. Please feel free to forward the link of the recording to your colleagues who may have missed today's session. As I mentioned earlier, we will also be forwarding a detailed guide to help you devise a successful back-to-work strategy for your workplace. Till we all meet again, stay masked, stay safe, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.